Be'ez Hashem, today's daf is Masechta Kiddushin Daf Chof Hey, and we will begin on. We're going to begin on. Hi, Alan. We're just beginning. We're on Chof Dalid Amid Beis, about like 7 lines from the bottom. Okay, Tanu Rabbanim. Let's bring it big. Okay, here we go. We're talking about an Eved Ivri, and Harei Shahoya. An Eved Ivri, we know, is Yoitze, goes out b'shein v'ayin. If the master knocks out his teeth or eye, the Eved goes free. Listen to this. Harei Shahoya Rabbi, the master was a roife, and he was a doctor or a makeup artist. V'amal loy, and the Eved says to the master, Likkoil loy einai, put makeup on my eye. So as the master is playing around with the eye, he accidentally visima, he blinded the eye. Or another case, lachzer loy shinoi, he asked him to whiten his teeth. The Eved asked his boss to whiten his teeth. The hipila, and then the Eved and the master knocked it out. So now he goes free. The Tanakama holds he could laugh at his master, the Yatzel Cheres, and goes out free. Perhaps he set the master up to make this kind of mistake, and now he gets his freedom. Rab Shimon ben Gamliel says, "Vishichasa." It's not true. The Chumash says that in order to go free, you have to damage the eye, and it says you have to damage it. Unless you had intention to damage the eye, intention to knock out the teeth, then you would go free. If not, not. V'Rabbanan, who hold you do go free. Hi v'shichasa, my avdelay. What do they do with the v'shichasa? Shimon ben Gamliel had a pasuk that used the v'shichasa to tell me you don't go free. So mi bayalu, look at the Tanya. The Rabbanan use it like the following brisa. In other words, even the Rabbanan, there are certain cases where you will not go free. What's the case? Rab Lezer says, let's say the master is delivering a baby on his shifcha knainis. And he stuck his hand into the womb of his maid, and he blinded the child, the ubar, in her stomach. So the embryo. So potter, he's potter, because here he didn't even have intention to go near the eye. My timer, and here you have to have intention to go near the eye. And in this case, even the Rabbanim would agree that you don't go free. But if he was asked to put makeup on the eye, or whiten the teeth, and he knocked it out, then you would go free. The Idach, Rav Shimon Gamliel says you don't go free in both scenarios. How does he learn it? He learns both ideas from the Torah, because it's written shiches, and it wrote shichasa. You learn two ideas, both ideas. Whether he had intention to go near the eye, and even if he had intention to go near the eye, you still do not go free. The Rabbanim don't make this distinction between a shiches and shichasa, and you can learn only one idea. And the only idea you will learn, that only if he has no intention to go near the eye and he accidentally knocked it out, then he will not go free. Rav Sheshes talks about another scenario. Let's say the Eved had a blind eye, an eye that wasn't working, le'aleinu. But what did the master do? V'chitma. Chitma means he dislodged the whole eye. He pulled the whole eye out. Eved yoytze ben lecheres. Now the Eved will go free. Lamaisa, the Eved wasn't seeing with this eye, but at the end of the day, now the Eved has no eye in the hole. So my tama mechusa evahu. He's missing a limb. The Tanatana and Rav Sheshes learned this idea from the following brisa. Tamas v'zachros bebehema, by a carbon with an animal, there's an idea that it has to be without a blemish and it has to be male. Be'ein tamas v'zachros ba'ipis. This idea of tamus has to be without blemish and it has to be a male does not apply by a bird. So if a bird has like a slit on its beak, it's not a puzzle. There's no such a thing of a mum that will puzzle the bird. Yochol, I would have thought that this would apply yofsha gapa if the wing dried out, niktiko ragla, if the foot was cut off completely, nechtata eina, or it's missing an eye. Talmud Loima, the pasuk says that I would think that's not called a blemish. Talmud Loima min oif, loy kol oif. Not every bird you can bring as a carbon. If the carbon is mechusar aver, then even if it's a bird where we're much lenient on blemishes, but if it's missing the whole limb, then it's not good for a carbon. So Rav Sheshes learned that idea that if an eved had an eye that wasn't working and the Adain pulled it out, so then he would go free because now he's missing that whole limb. Amar Rav Chiya Barashi Amar Rav. Rav Chiya Barashi is in the name of the Rav. Hoysala Yaseres v'chata. Let's say he had an extra finger and the Eved cut it off. The Adain cut it off. Guy had 6 fingers. Eved yoytze b'hem lecheres. The Eved would go free because even though you don't need 6 fingers, all you need is 5. But if you had a 6th finger and you're cutting it off, it's a mechutzer aver. The Eved would go free. Rav Huna said, "Who shenisperes al gaviyad?" It has to be counted along the other 5 fingers, because then it looks like an extra finger. But if it's just a pop out somewhere else, it looks like a wart. So that's would not be considered an extra finger. And if the Adam would cut that off, he would not go free. Now the Gemara says a story. Sabe din Nizonya, the old people, the old Talmidei Chachamim of this place called Nizonya. They didn't come to the Shir of Rav Chizda. Beautiful story. They didn't come to the Shir of Rav Chizda. That was disrespectful, because if they're not coming to the Shir of these, the type A people, other people are not going to come to the Shir. Amalei Rav Hamnuna, so Rav Chizda told Rav Hamnuna, Zil San Inhu, go put them in Cherem. Make sure that they now forced to stay home. Put the excommunication. Amalahu. So Rav Hamnuna came to the Bei Hamnuna, the Nizanya, and he said, "My tama lost Rabbana lepirka. I want to know, before I put you in Cherem, why did you come to the Shir of Rabbi Rav Chizda?" Rav Hamnuna was the student of Rav Chizda. Amrulei, so they told him, Amayna said, "What's the point of coming to the Shir? The Be'inim Minei Milsa V'lai Pashatlan. We ask him a question, and Rav Chizda doesn't answer us." Amalehel, so Rav Hamnuna said, "Mi be'asim minei mi v'lai pashtin lechu." But did you really ask him a question and he couldn't find the answer? My Rav Chizda knows it all. So they tried him out. They asked Rav Hamnuna the question and see if he knows. So Eved Shesarsu Rabbi Bebeit Mahu. If the master castrated the slave by his testicles, what's the din? Now, we know that what's considered a blemish that the Eved would go free, it has to be something that it can be seen. It's public. It's out there. So is it kamum shebegali dami? I lie. Do you look at it as a blemish that everybody can see, and then you would go free? Because, if it chop a finger off, everybody can see the person's missing a finger. Here, you can look at the testicles and something is off. It's severed. So, or light, but since it's in the eternal part of the body, it wouldn't be considered a mum shebegali, an open blemish, and therefore the Eved would not go free. So they asked this question to Rav Hamnuna. Rav Hamnuna was saying that I'm a student of Rav Chizda, I might know the answer. Lo have a bidet, he couldn't answer it. Amrulai, so they asked Rav Hamnuna, Mashmach, what is your name? Amalu, he said, my name is Hamnuna. Amrulay, so they told him, Lav Hamnuna, El Karnunusna. You're not named Kamnuna, but your name is Karnuna. It means that you play cards or something like that, or dominoes. What basically they're saying is you think yourself as such a learner. They made fun of his name because you can't even answer that question. Also, the comment of Rav Chizda. So Rav Hamnuna came back to Rav Chizda and told him the question that the Sabi, the Menuzia, wanted to ask him. Amalei, Rav Chizda had right away an answer. Masnisim b'aymanach. It's really an open brisa. The Tanya we learned in the brisa, supposed to be, I think, Tanya. Esrim. Now, the halachi is that if you have a leprosy, a negetzaras, what makes it definitively tameh is if you have a normal piece of colored skin in middle of the nega. So you have a white blotch and a normal piece of skin. That's called a michya. But if you have a nega on certain areas where you cannot see the normal piece of skin with one looking, it would not make the nega an automatic tameh. So the Brisa says, it's actually Mishnah, Esrim va'abal Rashi Avarim, there are 24 pointy limbs, Sheba Adam, Kulam Einam Tamam Mishim Yechya, that if you have a nega on those spots, they would not become tameh if a normal skin is there. For example, let's take your finger. So if the kohen would look at your finger and he sees a nega on the top of your finger, he can't look around to see the entire michya, the entire normal skin within the nega, within the white blotch. Therefore, you're not going to become tameh. And there are 24 types of body points that have that same din. The Eloheim, Rashi Etzbois, Yadayim v'Raglaim, all your fingers and toes. Rashi is naim, the tips of your ear. Rashi Chaitim, the tip of your nose. Rashi Agviya, the tip of the male organ. Rashi Dadim Shabi Isha, and the top of the nipples of a woman. Because these come to a point, and it's very, very difficult for the kohen to see the entire. The Torah is pedantic about it, and the Torah wants the kohen to see the entire michya at one point. Rabbi Huda, even the nipples of a person, even though it's not as protruding as a woman, but still it's bulging enough that if a nega in that place with a michya would not be a tamei nega. But point is, the Tanei Allah, and here's the point of this whole brisa, Bekulim and all these Rashi Avarim that we mentioned, if a master damages those Rashi Avarim, Eved the Eved will go out free. So if a master chopped the finger off or a toe off of his Eved, the Eved would go out free. So that's the Tanakama. Rebbe says, Af Hasiris, look at that. Rebbe says, even if the master castrated his slave, the Eved will go free. Ben Azai says, Af Haloshoin, even if the master damaged or cut a part of the Eved's tongue, he would go free. Now that's a chiddush, because the tongue also is inside the body. Yet it's not testicles. Testicles never appear outside of the body, but the tongue would appear outside of the body when you're talking. So Amamar, the Gemara is going to explain. So this is basically what Rebbe said. Afasiris, if he castrate the slave, he goes free. Seris Demai, who castrated him? Where did you castrate him? Seris the Gid. It's on the male organ. But that's already mentioned in the 24 Rashi Avarim is the male organ. Elalav Seris debates him, and if you Elalav, it must mean that we're talking about castrating him by the testicles. And Rebbe Oima Afaseris, and therefore Rebbe is of the opinion that even if the master would castrate him and do something to his testicles, he would go free. So that's your proof that there's a machlokes between Rebbe and the Tanakama if castration by the testicles is something that the Eved would go free. So you see, Rav Chizda did know the answer, and it actually boils down to a machlokes tanoim. The Gemara just finishes off over here and says, Rebbe says, only if you castrate him by the testicles. But the Rebbe Lashon Loi, would Rebbe hold by the tongue? If the master did something to the tongue of the Eved, he would not go free? Or Aminu, I'll ask you a question. You're doing, when a person becomes tamei, as you know, you get sprinkled by the ashes of the paraduma on the third day and the seventh day. And the sprinkling just is a sprinkle, and it has to hit you on the body anywhere. What happens if it hit on your mouth? Rabbi Yaimet Hiza, it's a kosher Hiza. The Chacham says that's not kosher. You weren't yoytze. My love, what did Rebbe say? Ala shaynoi, that you got it on the tongue. So we see that the tongue is considered a part of the body that's considered outside the body, because the Torah does say you have to sprinkle the guy. So presumably the Torah meant that you sprinkle him on something that is seen which is the outside of the body, not on the inside of his body. And Rebbe holds that if you sprinkle it on his nose, on his tongue, it's good. So the Gemara says, "Loi." That's not what Rebbe meant. Al sfasav, Rebbe meant if you hit his lips. So the Gemara says, Al sfasav pshita. If you sprinkle him on his lips, certainly it should be a good hazah. When the paraduma waters hit his lips, that's on the outside of the body. So even why would Chachamim even say it's not kosher? So the Gemara says, "Ma would the same. I would think Zimnan the Chacham say sometimes you could close your lips tight, and you can't see your lips. So Kamash Malon that the lips are considered an open part of the body. So you don't see clearly that Rebbe holds that the tongue is considered an open part of the body. But the Gemara doesn't still has a problem. Well, Tanya, we learned in the Brisa al l'shaynoi. There's another Brisa that says clearly that if you hit the tongue, Rebbe holds it's a good sprinkling. So we see that Rebbe holds the tongue is considered outside the body. V'oitanya. So, and we know the Brisa, V'shenitel roiv haloshin, Rebbe oimer roiv hamadal b'shebel l'shaynoi. Rebbe holds that certain types of mum that pasal b'char is if the tongue is missing, and Rebbe says only the part of the tongue that's missing is the tongue that the animal would, if he could talk, the animal would you would be able to see it. So it's the speech part of the tongue, not the tongue that's connected to the rest of the body. The point is, in order for a bachar to become pasul, you have to do a blemish that's on the outside of the body, that's public, that can be seen. So we see that Rebbe has this opinion that the tongue is considered an outside part of the body. So getting back to our question, why would Rebbe hold that if the Odoin cut the tongue off of his Eved, he would not go free? The tongue is considered a mum shebagolui. Answers the Gemara, Ella Rebbe says Seris. Rebbe said, you're right. Castrating the testicles, that's a blemish. Certainly the tongue, if you cut off the tongue. Seris with the testicles, that's inside the body. Rebbe holds that's the Eved would go free. Certainly the tongue, which is a type of organ that's seen outside the body when you speech, certainly if the master did something to the tongue, the Eved would go free. So Rebbe holds both. But Ben Azai says Loshen, only the tongue. Al Seris loy. Ben Azai, who came, was the next Mandiyama after Rebbe, he said only if the Odain cut off the tongue. But castration of the testicles, that's not a damage that the Eved would go free. So then why did Rabbi Ben Azai say af haloshain, also the tongue? Akamayisa, he's referring back to the Tanakama. Tanakama gave you a bunch of limbs, 24 limbs, and Rabbi Azai just added on the loshen. So now, if you think about it, then Ben Azai should have been mentioned first, because usually the Brisas will go moisef v'hoylach. It will say this one, then this one adds, and this one adds most. So Rebbe should be listed last, moisef v'hoylach. So that why is Ben Azai listed as the last one? Let's put Ben Azai before Rebbe. So the Gemara answers that the reason the Brisa is set up this way is that Tana Shama the Rebbe Yekva. The Tana of the Brisa originally heard Rebbe's opinion that it's Seris and Loshen, and he put Rebbe right there. Then a while later, as he's writing the Brisa, he heard Ben Azai's opinion. Ushama the Ben Azai Vatani, and then he added Ben Azai's opinion. But already people were memorizing the original Brisa's version, which only had two opinions, which it had the Tanakama's opinion and it had Rebbe's opinion. So that's stuck in their head. So therefore, he could not remove Rebbe's opinion and stick in Ben Azai. He could only put Ben Azai after Rebbe, so that the Mishnah will not move from its original set place in people's mind. Again, everything was done by memory back then, and that's sometimes it doesn't line up so sensical. Nu Gemara, Ula said, Hakol Moedim, everybody would agree, Beloshin Le'inyan Tuma. Very interesting. What is the tongue when it touches a tame? Let's say a tongue touches a sheretz. Do you become tame? Everybody holds you would become tame. If you stick your tongue and you touch a rodent, you become tame. The galuhu eats al sheretz, because that's the tongue is considered open and public when it refers to becoming tame with a sheretz. My timer, the Torah says by a sheretz, ashiyigabay, if you touch it, amarachmana. The hainami barnagia, and this is you're touching it with the tongue, and therefore you become tame. Le'inyan tvila, what about going to the mikveh? Does a person when he goes to the mikveh have to open his mouth so his tongue touches the water? Imagine that. So then can tummy dummy. Then we consider the tongue as a hidden part of the body, which you don't have to open your mouth. My tama, because the pasuk says the rochatz,
Memory full.
The Torah says the rochatz besorei by mine. The Torah says by the going to the mikvah, you're supposed to put your body in the water. Amarach bara. My besorei. What do you mean your body? Me'abrai refers to the outside of your body. Avkol me'abrai. So everything that has to be in the mikvah is only things that are outside the body. So the tongue, you don't have to open your tongue when you go to the mikvah. The argument is Ela Inyan Hazor regarding sprinkling of the paraduma. Rebbe compares it like becoming tummy for the sherets, that the tongue is considered like outside the body. Rabbanan consider the tongue like tvila when it comes to sprinkling, and that's considered inside the body. So if you sprinkle the paraduma waters on the tongue, it's not kosher. But they're arguing on the pasuk that talks about sprinkling. The Torah says v'hiza hatar al tame. So Rebbe Sava, this is how you read it. V'hiza hatar, somebody who's tar should sprinkle the paraduma waters al hatame. By Yom HaShlish v'Yom HaShlish, you should do it on the third day and the seventh day. V'chitoi, and make him become pure. So therefore, Rebbe juxtaposes that in order to become tar from the sprinkling, it's similar to becoming tameh. Just like tameh, the tongue is considered outside the body. So the sprinkling also, the tongue is considered outside of the body. Rabbanan Sari, but Rabbanan hold v'chitoi b'yam hashvi v'chibetz b'god v'rachatz b'mayim. The Torah says you become tar, and then you should go to the mikvah. So the Torah is saying the sprinkling is similar to going to the mikvah. Just like going to the mikvah, the tongue is considered inside the body. So also by sprinkling of the Taraduma waters, the tongue is considered as part of inside the body. Ask the Gemara, let's compare it to Tomei. It says the Gemara, I want to compare it, sprinkling, to going to the mikvah. The Rebbe, let's Rebbe compare it to going to the mikvah. Why does it compare it to becoming tamei? Because if you look at this pasuk, the Torah puts v'chibes begadav as a dividing between v'chitoi and v'rachatz. So therefore, you rather put v'chitoi as comparing to tamei than to v'rachatz. So that's why Rebbe thought it's more likely to compare to toma. Now the question is like this. So Rebbe holds that you don't have to open your mouth when you go to the mikvah. So now the question is, does Rebbe hold that when you go to the mikvah, you don't have to open your mouth? It's considered as an inside part of the body. Rabbi Yitzchak said, Masa, there was a story. Also, she went, a maid in Rebbe's house went to the mikvah, and she got out of the mikvah, and she had a bone between her teeth. Rebbe said, it's not a kosher tvila. You have to go to the mikvah again. But why? Just because there was a bone in her mouth, you never have to open your mouth when you go to the mikvah. So why did Rebbe make her go to the mikvah again? Answers the Gemara, Nihi, the bias ma'im lo be'inim. True, you don't have to open your mouth when you go to the mikvah, but mokam haroy lo boy ma'im be'inim. You have to have it that potentially, that if you would open your mouth, all the water would be able to go into your mouth without any chatzitza. To the Rab Zera, Dam Rab Zera, call a royal bila ein bila makavis boy, v'shein el bila bila makavis boy. This is an idea you actually see by menachos, but the point is that it has to be not that you have to open your mouth when you go to the mikvah, but you have to make sure there's no chatzitza in your mouth going to the mikvah. I heard that some people, there is an opinion from the Gra that you can't even have a cavity filling for a woman to go to the mikvah. I mean, it's a rogue opinion, but you see that even to keep a chatzitz in your mouth, we don't allow chetzitz's mouth, even though you don't have to open your mouth when you go to the mikvah, because the Torah says v'rachatz kol b'sorei, which means your entire body, and then it says yodayim. It has to be something outside the body. So we say that technically the water has to come only on the outside of the body, but kol b'sorei means that even on the inside of the body, you're not allowed to have a chetzitza, which means even in your mouth, you're not allowed to have a chetzitza. We go to Amud Beis, Chafei Amud Beis, Ketanoi. It's a machlekes tanoim again. If castration is considered, by the testicles is a mum shebagoli, because the Torah says ma'uch v'chasis v'nasik v'charus. These are by a mum by an animal. So those whose stones are or testicles are bruised or crushed or torn or cut. Kulam bebeitziv. This is all by the testicles. Divrei Rabbi Yehuda, that passes an animal. Frank the Gemara, but Beitzav will begin if by the testicles, but not by the main organ of the animal. Certainly by the main organ of this animal, these kind of problems are mumim. Elakulim afba Beitzav. Rabbi Yehuda holds like Rebbe, who said that even the eggs, even by the testicles, that's considered a mum. Divrei Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Lezer ben Yaakov, kulam begid. Rabbi Lezer ben Yaakov says it's only by the organ, on the outside of the organ, but not by the beitzim. But it's crushed or bruised, that's by the testicles. Noskik, a torn, a cut. The charus bagid in, that could only applies by the organ, by the organ itself. The beitzim loy, not by the testicles. Bottom line is that this machlokes of Rebbe and the Tanakama and Ben Azai is this machlokes over here. Rebbe will hold like Rabbi Yehuda, and Tanakama and Ben Azai will hold like Rabbi Lezer. Another two or three more minutes. Let's do the Mishnah. The Mishnah is discussing over here kinyonim, behema gasa. If I have a cow, right, how do I acquire that animal? Right, you have to do an action when you're purchasing something to show that you're the owner. So niknes, you buy it bimsira with you taking a hold of its reins. You take a hold of the reins of the animal or the bit of the animal. That's how you acquire a big animal. Vahadaka, what about a small animal like a goat or a little baby sheep? Bahagba, you have to do the best type of kinyan, which is lifting it up. Divrei Rameir, that's the opinion of Rameir, Rabbi Lezer. The Chachamim says, you're right, behema gasas b'mesira, or behema daka, a small animal, you don't have to lift it up. You could do something even less. Niknas b'meshicha. You can acquire it by pulling on it. Either you pull it towards you, or you hit it with a stick and it moves, or you whistle to it and it moves towards you. So that's how, according to Chachamim, you could acquire a small animal. So now the Gemara continues. Darash Rav b'kimchanya. Rav made a speech in this place called Kimchanya. He said, behema gasa niknas b'meshicha. Behema gasa, a big animal, if you want to acquire it, you do the meshicha. Again, you pull the animal towards you, or you whistle and it moves towards you. So, Ashkachu Shmuel Talmidei de Rav. Shmuel found the students of Rav. Amalu, he asked, Mi Amar Rav behema gasa niknas b'meshicha. Would Rav say that a behema gasa is acquired with meshicha? V'anam b'mesira tanam. We learned in our Mishnah that a big animal is only with mesira, because behema gasas b'mesira, and even the Chachamim in the Mishnah say only behema daka, small animals with meshicha. But a behema gasa, everybody in our Mishnah means mesira, which means that in order to acquire an animal that's big, you have to hold its reins or hold the bit of the animal. That's how you acquire it. So where did Rav come up with this thing called meshicha by a behema gasa? Rav Nami b'Masira Ama. Rav always used to say that behema gasas were b'Masira. Hada b'Mahi, did he change his mind? That now Rav is saying that behema gasa you could acquire with Mashicha. So did Rav change his mind? And says the Gemara, yes. Rav holds like the following patana. Tanya, we learned in the Brisa. Zu v'zu. Big animal or small animal, niknes could be acquired using the meshicha, using the calling or drawing the animal towards you, making it move. That's and Rav was holding that even a behema gasa could go with meshicha. Shimon oimer zu v'zu b'hagba. Wow, Shimon holds that the only way to acquire a small animal or a big animal is by lifting it. Now, obviously, you can have a big question. If you're buying an elephant, how are you gonna lift it? So that's going to be the final question. But let's just finish the point. The point is that there are now four opinions. Rav Meir in our Mishnah says a gasa animal is with mesira, daka animal is with hagbah. Rab Chachamim says a gasa animal is with mesira, a daka animal is with meshicha. The Chachamim in the Brisa say a gasa and daka animals with meshicha, and Rab Shimon, who we just learned, that in order to acquire a small animal or a big animal, it is with hagbah. One more minute and we'll finish. Maskef lo Rav Yosef El Ma'ata. Rav Yosef said, according to Rab Shimon, you have to lift these animals. Let's say I'm buying a pill, an elephant. Rab Shimon, but how are you going to buy an elephant? How are you going to lift up an elephant? What's the kinyan for an elephant? Amalei Abai said bechalipim. You do a barter exchange, like you give the seller your handkerchief, and he makes in his mind that he's giving you the elephant. Inami b'soiches mekayma. He rents you the place, so now the elephant is in your chutzer. Wherever the elephant is, that becomes your domain. Rab Zera give another idea how to acquire an elephant. Maybe abal kalim, you bring 4 vessels, you put it like in the circus, you put it under its feet, and the elephant walks on these 4 cups. Shamet minei kalim shalakech b'shus moicha kanalakech. Can you put the vessels of the purchaser in the domain of the seller? Would that work? In other words, when I'm buying something from somebody and I bring my tote bag, if he puts it and I put my tote bag in his domain and he puts the item that I'm purchasing in the tote bag, according to some opinions, it doesn't work. So if I go to what the Gemara's question is, if I go to the person who's selling me the elephant, and I'm going to his backyard, and then I bring these 4 vessels and make the animal step on these 4 vessels, it's the kalev, the vessels of the purchaser in the domain of the seller, and not everybody holds that works. And says the Gemara, you actually buy it in the side of the Rishus Harabim, not in the domain of the seller. So then, even with the 4 vessels, it can work. One last line, iname, and this is it. How do you buy an elephant? Bechavili zemoiris, with a bundle of vines. You get the elephant to go up onto these bundles of vines. So now it's 3 tfachim all off the ground, and that's the way it's as if you're lifting him. And that was the idea of what Rabbi Shimon said, how you can acquire an elephant with Hagba'ah. Okay, Baruch Hashem, we got to Daf Chavav.